I'm Bob Brill. He's Erik Kramer. Welcome to Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football podcast, and now a video cast as well. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, LibsonRadio.com, and wherever you get your podcasts. Now you can also see a video cast on YouTube by going to my YouTube channel, Bob Brill YouTube channel, or by finding the links for all of this at KramerandBrill.com. That is definitely the easiest way, KramerandBrill.com. You'll see us on Facebook as well. We have a Facebook page. You can go there and check it all out as well. We'll take a look at how we did for you, a look at this week's games, who's trending, and our feature Ask the Quarterback. Each week, we select a fan who writes in to ask Erik a fantasy football-related question. We'll bring that fan onto the video podcast to ask that question directly. Now, you can be that fan. All you have to do is simply email me at brillpro@gmail.com. That's brillpro@gmail.com. You can see it right there on the bottom of the screen. So how did we do for you? First, let me give props to my colleague and my co-host here, Erik. You said it was time and you expected Julio Jones to take charge. All he did was 8 catches, 137 yards, and a pair of touchdowns. Good show, dude. I said the Steelers would stuff Kareem Hunt, and he was held to 40 yards and no scores. We like Chase Claypool again. He had 74 yards, a score, and 4 catches, almost had a second score. I like Darius Slayton, and while he did get injured, he had 2 catches and a touchdown. We like Matt Ryan with 371 and 4 touchdowns and no picks. Deshaun Watson, 335 for scores, and Ryan Tannehill, 4 touchdown passes and 364. Otherwise, not really a great day for quarterbacks, but running backs did well. We liked Ronald Jones. He had 113 and 2 scores. Well, what can you say about Derrick Henry? 212, 2 scores, a 95-yard run, had 2 catches for 52 more. DeAndre Swift, the rookie, looking good, 116, 2 scores. James Conner, again, over 100. I said Will Fuller was your go-to guy, and all he did was catch 6 for 123 and a touch. We also like T. Higgins, who had 125, Kenny Golladay, and Tim Patrick, each with over 100. Now, we took some time, but Gronk is back, 5 for 78. He had a score that looks sort of like the old Gronk. We didn't see Anthony Frisker going off for Tennessee in place of the injured Jonnu Smith, but we liked what we saw, and he led all tight ends with 8 catches and a score of plus 113 yards. Trending up this week, Ronald Jones, Chase Claypool, Anthony Frisker, Philip Lindsay, Darren Fells, Carson Wentz, DeAndre Swift, Justin Jefferson, Julio Jones, Gronk, Le'Veon Bell, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and the Bucs defense. Tua has been named the starting quarterback from Miami, but they have a bye this week. Now, trending down this week, Juju Smith-Schuster, Baker Mayfield, Joe Mixon, Adrian Peterson, Miles Sanders, Jonnu Smith, and also, you won't see this very often, Le'Veon Bell is also on the trending down list after Clyde Edwards-Helaire's 160-yard-plus performance. So your thoughts on this week? Another tough week for injuries, especially the Steelers losing a key player on their defense for the season. Devin Bush suffered a torn ACL, and he's done, and that will hurt. So how does one recover from that kind of injury?
Well, I do have experience with not ACL tear, but a PCL tear. Back when I was playing in Canada, this was back in, I guess it was been getting ready for the '89 season. We had an inter-squad scrimmage before the season began, and that's how that ended up happening for me. So I was done for the year, and it's, you have surgery, you have rehab. That's the physical part. Doctors all take care of that. But in regards to Devin Bush, it's going to really be trying to stay and making sure you stay connected to that team as the leader that he is, and not let yourself drift off mentally, that you get this you can very easily get this feeling that the team is going on without you, especially the Steelers, being that they're doing so well right now and will continue to also probably. And it's easy to get lost if you're Devin Bush to thinking, hey, they can do just fine without me. Well, he's got to make sure that doesn't happen mentally for him.
So take a look at what your thoughts were for the week on what happened overall this week.
Well, I think like the rest of the football world, I did not see the Buccaneers defense destroying what seemed to be the unstoppable Packers and Aaron Rodgers, but they did. And so that, I think, threw a lot of people off. Rodgers not only had 2 picks, but he couldn't get settled underneath, even behind. There was no pocket for him. He got sacked 4 times, and just the flow of the game didn't happen for the Packers like we're accustomed to seeing. Aaron Jones had 15 yards on, 10 carries. And so I think that the Bucs defense, even though they're not right at the top of the league, have shown, and they talked about throughout the game, this is a very, very good defense that's capable of doing what they just did. And, you mentioned the Titans also and Jonnu Smith, or actually Frisco did not step up really for Jonnu Smith, but A.J. Brown did, had a couple of touchdown passes. And I think he's not the down the field threat, but he is himself built like a tight end and makes a lot of tough catches and red zone catches. And then I think Phillip Rivers surprised me anyway, in that, he's been under a lot of fire lately. This is thought to have been a Super Bowl contending Indianapolis Colts team, and that he was taking all the flack for them not getting off to a good start offensively. Well, not only did they spot the Bengals 21 points, but he was a big reason why they came back and were able to win that game. And so I think that hats off to him for that. The Patriots, though, you could tell not only had they had very little practice time in his last couple of weeks, but Cam Newton, I think, took a significant step backward. And he did not look comfortable in the pocket. He was indecisive, inaccurate, held the ball too long. When their offensive line, that was the story going into the game, that there were so many different combinations of offensive line, groups working together. And then during the game had some guys go down with injuries. So I think that's a step that the Patriots have to correct. Defensively, they were getting gashed as well, something we're not used to seeing. And the Browns, I think here I have been, after week one, I mean, they've been showing me and the rest of the league that they are going back in the right direction, a lot due to Kevin Stefanski and his influence. But they ran into a buzzsaw and came down to earth hard against your Steelers. And now can they respond? I don't know. I mean, they did it after week one. They got embarrassed in Baltimore, and now they're going to have to right the ship again the rest of the way. And the Dolphins, here you mentioned they just made a switch to Tua, which surprises me because their season's not lost. They got off to a slow start, but they've won the last two. They embarrassed the 49ers in San Francisco. They came back and shut out the Jets. And you think, hey, now they're on a roll. It doesn't make sense to me, even with the bye, why you'd be starting Tua at this point. But, I think Fitzpatrick has earned the right. I know he's fizzled sometimes, especially in the later part of his career, these last few years, where he's gotten off to a good start and then somehow fizzled out. I don't see that out of him this year. It wasn't like he was throwing the ball all over the place and putting up fantastic numbers week to week, but he was making good decisions. I think running the ball well and getting them in the right play. And so, I don't agree with the switch, but then I'm not the head coach either for the Dolphins.
I was going to ask you about your thoughts on Le'Veon Bell with Kansas City, but now after last night, that's changed, I would think, because Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it's sort of like he woke up and got the message with 160 yards rushing.
Right. And I think I said this a couple of weeks ago, where the Chiefs are kind of like the early 2000 New England Patriots. They have so many ways to beat you. You don't know which Chiefs team is. Are they going to run down your throat one week like they did last night against the Bills, or are they going to throw it all over the yard, which they're obviously capable of doing? And I think they had mentioned that in the game about Le'Veon Bell coming over to really an embarrassment of riches, that Randy Reid has to choose from all these different weapons, including Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So Le'Veon Bell, I think, has got something to prove in that, he hasn't done really anything this year, didn't play the year before. And, is he still the guy that is the red zone threat, picks and chooses the holes to run through, does that explosively, and then is a great receiver too? I think, like you said, Edwards-Helaire made a statement that, hey, I'm still here. And but I think now that they've got Bell to go with them, Williams is already there as well. I think the Chiefs obviously are, if you talk about trending up, they are.
You got that right. Now we come to our new regular feature, Ask the Quarterback. It's brand new, and today we welcome in Brian Wallace, a fantasy football league coach from Southern California. Brian, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Bob, I live in Thousand Oaks. Been out here about a year and a half after 20 years in Texas. My wife's son has a couple little boys, so we moved back out here to be near them, and really enjoying being out here. I love it out here. It's not to love.
It's true. So you're in are you in more than one fantasy football league?
No, I'm in one keeper league right now. It's my second year. And it takes a little while to build a good team with the keeper league, but it's coming along. I'm 4-2 right now,
Well, that's good.
so doing okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you like to ask Erik?
Well, with recent injuries, Erik, should I look at Giovanni, Bernard, Boston Scott, or Gus Edwards? What do you think?
Well, do you already have them on your roster, or are you looking to pick them up? Possibly?
No, I don't, and they're available, and I don't have them. And my running back position outside of Josh Jacobs is pretty weak.
Okay. Here's what comes to mind is that that Joe Mixon's not hurt, so he's not going anywhere, and he's a pretty good back himself. I think in Philadelphia, they're not really playing all that well, and for sure not that consistently. And then the best running back on the Baltimore Ravens roster is Lamar Jackson. So I would look maybe to like Le'Veon Bell, who we talked about, maybe joining the Chiefs. He's going to get some touches, and he's always been a red zone producer. He also catches the ball out of the backfield, so you're going to get both running and passing volume out of him. And then, I think with his departure in New York, you've got LaMichael Pirine, that he's obviously going to be the main feature back there as well. So there's a couple of other, I think, people out there that maybe people in your league are maybe starting to look to that you might want to look at as well.
I think Frank Gore is available on a lot of lists now too. And you mentioned Pirine, that if Pirine's not available, Frank Gore, even though he's like, what, 1.5 billion years old, still is serviceable. I think I saw last week he actually ran for double figures, like 11 points. And Boston Scott, I personally like Boston Scott. I think with Miles Sanders being questionable again this week, it's a definite possibility with him. Giovanni Bernard, I think his time's passed. Erik, you think so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he certainly his amount of touches and carries have gone down over the last couple of years. Joe Mixon, if anyone's going to go off, it's going to be Joe Mixon in Cincinnati in terms of touch, carries. And I know he's not a great receiver out of the backfield, but certainly he's a producer when he's got the ball in his hands running it. But right now in Cincinnati, they're focused on throwing the ball all over the place with Joe Burrow. So I think running backs right now in Cincinnati are a little iffy.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of the Jets running back with Le'Veon leaving. That's something to look at. I'll get on there as soon as we're done here. Take a look at that. That's a possibility. He'll be the lead running back now. Sure. Makes sense.
So, Brian, does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. Thanks for your time.
Oh, you got it. Well, thank you for joining us, and keep playing fantasy football.
Thanks, Brian.
All right.
Absolutely. I will, Bob.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, remember, if you'd like to ask the quarterback, all you have to do is just write us an email at brillpro@gmail.com. And if we select you, which is a good shot, we will, and email just right there on the bottom of your screen, brillpro@gmail.com. We'll get in touch with you, and we'll bring you on right here on Fantasy Football with Erik Kramer and Bob Brill. And you can ask Erik a question, fantasy football related question directly. Now let's get to this week's games, starting with the Giants and Eagles. Daniel Jones goes up against a tough Eagles defense, so I wouldn't bet much here. And while I like Darius Slayton, maybe not in this situation. Carson Wentz seems to be playing well enough, so I'd start him along with Travis Fulgham. And I do like, as I mentioned, Boston Scott, especially here if Miles Sanders can't go. So you want to watch the injury wires. With the injury to Zach Ertz, it might be time to look at Richard Rodgers. Rodgers is an experienced tight end, and he did catch 3 passes this last week.
Yeah, in terms of fantasy football, neither one of these teams offensively are really putting it together right now. Fulgham, as you mentioned he's got 3 straight games with at least a touchdown pass in each game. And Slayton kind of looks to be the go-to guy for Daniel Jones. The problem in that equation is Daniel Jones right now hasn't really been productive this year. You have to figure it's going to happen at some point, and the Eagles have not been, stellar, I'd say, week to week defensively. So maybe this will be the week for him to turn things around. And if he does, you're right. I think Slayton's going to be the guy.
Steelers and Titans. So Derrick Henry is going to be tough to stop here, especially since, as we mentioned, Devin Bush is in the middle is gone due to injury. So look for the Steelers to concentrate all their efforts on him, which leaves Tannehill free to do much more. Frisker might be a play, so watch the injury wires for Jonnu Smith at tight end. This could be the Steelers' toughest game this year. I do like Claypool and Washington, along with Connor and Ebron. Juju not getting targeted enough to recommend for me. Connor has been solid, though.
Well, like you mentioned, and you've been mentioning all year, Claypool is just, for a rookie, for not a rookie, the guy's having an amazing year. And 4 touchdown passes last week, or 3, whatever it was. He's obviously formed a connection that Ben Roethlisberger is very comfortable with. And but I agree with you regarding Henry being the new kind of bus, if you will, in Nashville. And A.J. Brown, is another guy that, as I mentioned before, he's kind of stepped up for when Corey Davis has been gone. He's filled that role, especially in the red zone. So I think he's a good target as well. And, I think like most NFL observers might not think about Ryan Tannehill.
Cowboys of Washington, I'm really loving Terry McLaurin against the Cowboys defense, and Antonio Gibson is solid. Well, and I'm looking at the boys, Andy Dalton, I'm not going to recommend, not after the other night. And all the receivers, they're good starts for sure. I think Zeke should be better here.
Yeah, I think we all expected the Cowboys to kind of pick up from where they left off the week before when Dalton came in for Dak Prescott, but it just didn't happen against the Cardinals. And I think that's what I would think is a big question mark. I think they've got to take this week against Washington, to me, to prove that they're back. And offensively, until that happens, I wouldn't be comfortable starting anybody there this week, even if they produce in the past. I think that, you know how I feel about McLaurin. I think doesn't matter who's playing quarterback, he's still going to put up points. And I think until a quarterback asserts himself there's really no one else to play in Washington.
Yeah, the Bills and Jets, and for the Jets, the only thing I can say is look to pick up LaMichael Pirine. He's going to get some volume moving forward, and the rookie is good. The Bills should be all over this one. Look for a lopsided game here.
Well, but there is one caveat to that, is that yes, he will be the guy, but if this is a blowout, early by the Bills, then how much is LaMichael Pirine going to be effective, and will he continue to get carries if they do fall behind and end up throwing the ball in order to keep up?
Yeah, that's always a tough one, especially in fantasy. You're sitting there and you've got a running back on a team that is like 25 points ahead in the third quarter. It's like, oh man, they are 25 points behind. I mean, and they're not going to give them the ball. They may throw it to him. You could hope for that, but wow. I mean, what's going to happen here? You get all frustrated about it. I know that that's always a weekly thing. Fantasy football will kill you every week. Well, Panthers and Saints.
Well, who would have thought, the Bills and Josh Allen wouldn't have fallen as flat as they did.
Yeah.
So they've got to answer back too. That you would think that, okay, yes, we're going to start Josh Allen every week and right along with Beasley and Diggs. I think you should this week if you have them, because the Jets might be the perfect tonic for what they just faced against Kansas City. And hopefully that happens. I think that threesome right there is good enough week to week to play.
I think so too. Panthers at Saints. I do. I like both Panthers here, especially the wideouts and Mike Davis. Now for the Saints, about the same. Michael Thomas was disciplined after a confrontation with a teammate, so he is back this week. But I don't know what that says about his mindset.
Well, I think that the Saints are just an offensive machine. They've been that way ever since Sean Payton and Drew Brees have teamed up. Doesn't seem to matter who the go-to receiver is, whether it was it Golson or Colson? I forget his name before, the one who stood out for about 8 or 9 years there with Breeze the first time around, and now you've got Michael Thomas. Whoever's going to step in there, Michael Thomas, I wouldn't, even if he got disciplined, I don't think it's going to affect his play. And the Panthers, they just played their 2 toughest games, defenses they faced this year have been the Bucs and the Bears. In which case, they were bad numbers both days for Teddy Bridgewater. But the Saints aren't that type of defense. And I think this is one week that Bridgewater, like the other weeks he's played very well, he's going to produce again. And I think Robbie Anderson has had 3, 100-yard days. He's only had 1 touchdown pass, but I think that's going to grow as time goes on because Bridgewater is just too good.
Yeah, the Packers at Texans. I don't look for Aaron Rodgers to rebound after that horrendous loss to Tampa Bay. The Texans are tough. I see more of the same, while at the same time, I see Deshaun Watson going off a big time again. Will Fuller's a stick-to guy along with Cooks, and it seems Phelps is getting more involved now.
Well, I would look at it though this way. So over time, okay, how many bad games has Aaron Rodgers ever had in his life? Probably not a lot. And this one obviously got away early with that pick six and just went downhill from there. The Texans are not the Buccaneers defensively. So I think Rodgers' mindset is what sets him apart along with his talent. But I think he's not going to have back-to-back poor games. There's just, too many weapons around him. Their offensive line, obviously, Bakhtiari got hurt. That's the big question mark. Do they have a guy that can fill in for him? But Rodgers has been able to do things that not a lot of quarterbacks can, and typically not a lot of protection all the time. Sometimes he has it, sometimes he doesn't, but he still seems to produce. And that they still have Devontae Adams, they still have Aaron Rodgers or Aaron Jones, and so I think those guys are going to produce also.
In watching that game, it reminded me of something you and I talked about last year, and that is if you can not so much get to Aaron Rodgers, but if you can bump him a few times. And the same thing we talked about Tom Brady. If you can get in and hit him a few times, it seems like they really start to feel that pressure, maybe more than some other quarterbacks. I don't know. I'm not in that situation, but it just seems like he gets rattled faster and starts to make some bad decisions.
Okay, name a quarterback that doesn't affect.
I knew you were going to say that.
Interceptions happen typically when you have pressure on the quarterback. So Aaron Rodgers is no different. Tom Brady's no different. And, they typically don't do it a lot. I think I heard in the game, they mentioned that there's only been, 3 games where Rodgers has ever had multiple interception games. And so I don't look for that to continue. Like I said, the Texans are they've won 1 game this year.
Right.
Defensively, they're no juggernaut. I don't look for a bad game out of Rodgers. In fact, just the opposite. I think this is where the Hall of Famer mentality that he's got and has cultivated over the years and produced over the years, this is where that shows up in the following week after a bad game.
Spoken like a true NFL quarterback. Browns and Bengals. It depends on how banged up the Browns are. If Case Keenum is starting, I like their chances, but if it's Mayfield, I don't. I think Cincinnati's about to explode. Who best to explode against than your cross-state rivals? Take Burrow, T. Higgins, and A.J. Green. I'm not sold on Beckham being in the right mindset again after being shut down by Pittsburgh.
Well, I kind of think Mayfield has got a lot to answer to this week, and he's been kind of riding the wave of the team having success these last 4 or 5 weeks, where really he has not set himself apart. He's just been a part. He's been a player in that, and I think done a great job playing his role. I think after getting embarrassed, not only himself, but their entire team, offense, defense, nobody produced against the Steelers. And I think that's going to say a lot now about how he responds, how Kevin Stefanski steps in and hopefully settles the team down, kind of like he did after the Ravens loss in week 1. And, you said, Burrow and the Bengals are going to explode, are ready to explode. They've been exploding offensively through the air every week. I mean, there's not been one bad game out of Joe Burrow. And so I think that that's going to continue. But in terms of being competitive and winning games, this is what I think the Bengals need. They need a little bit more depth offensively on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. They've got they're maybe a player or two away in terms of weapons offensively. Defensively, their defensive line is not going to be there for them every week. And so I think for them to start winning games and getting over the humps where they're not just close every week. I mean, remember, they had a 21-point lead against the Colts last week and blew that. So I think for them to get over that hump and actually start closing these games out, they're still a year or two away from that. But Burrow and that offense, they're going to continue to roll.
Got the Lions at Falcons. I'd ride DeAndre Swift, and I would replace Adrian Peterson. Stick with Stafford and Golladay. Any Falcons receiver is good to go, and I'd stick with Todd Gurley as well. This could be a high-scoring game of the week.
I agree with you. I mean, the Falcons are been doing it every week offensively throughout the year. The Lions are just starting hitting the uptick as well. I think TJ Hawkinson is another guy that I've seen every single week. That's a guy that Matthew Stafford looks for in a lot of situations, especially in the red zone. And so I think now that, they beat the Jaguars last week. And the main story right now is that Patricia has bought himself at least one more week where they're not talking about firing him. And so I think the Lions are talented enough where they can start to get on a roll here. And the Falcons, even though offensively they have just been outstanding fantasy football wise, they cannot close out a game. And so I think that's why the Lions might have a chance in this one as well.
Seahawks and Cardinals are coming off a week. The Seahawks will be rested. Russell Wilson should have a field day along with DK Metcalf. Lockett also signed. I really like Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins this week for Arizona. Hopkins didn't have a great game against Dallas, but Murray had an outstanding, probably one of the best. Probably might have been the best game he's had in the NFL so far.
He's done pretty well in that stadium. They pointed out, I don't know if he's watched the game, but he, in high school, he played in Allen, Texas. So they won, 3 straight state championships.
Right. 42 wins there against
something like that. So you're right. And I think this is going to be a big shootout too. I mean, the Seahawks have they've been winning games this year because of Russell Wilson and because of DJ Metcalf, not really because of the defense. And I think with a vulnerable defense, the Cardinals are going to have a chance anyway to pick them apart. There's not a lot of guys like Russell Wilson other than Kyler Murray. So I think he's an explosive player. I think Brian Griese referred to him as a flame, getting outside the pocket, getting to the sideline, get into the end zone. And that's kind of what it's like watching him play. And so I think, there's going to be good numbers offensively on both teams this week.
Jaguars and Chargers. Keelan Cole had 6 for 143, replacing the injured DJ Clark. So watch the injury wires here. Otherwise, Cole may be at least an option at flex. Now, I'm not a Minshew fan this week. I do like Justin Herbert and Justin Jackson, but watch the injury wires on Keenan Allen, who had some back issues this week.
Right when I was converted to Minshew mania, he, along with their rookie James Robinson, have vanished, right, the last few weeks. So I wouldn't start Minshew here either. And I agree with you on Keelan Cole. He's, not only a breakout game versus Detroit with the numbers you mentioned, but of Minshew's 11 touchdown passes, Cole's caught 3 of them. And he's obviously a very good target anywhere down the field, especially in the red zone.
Niners and Patriots, James White and Julian Edelman are flex options. I like Edelman, and I'll tell you why. He's now throwing more than one pass a game and connecting. So that's some extra points for you. You sort of get that extra quarterback situation going. Cam Newton leads the team in rushing again. He's, as you mentioned earlier, he's really not looking like he's right. Deebo Samuel and Kittle are the only picks for me here. I like Garoppolo, but not this week.
Well, okay. Think about it. Who would have chosen Garoppolo the week before against the Rams? No one.
Yeah.
So yet he threw 3 touchdown passes. I know one of them, that's a little flip pass to the receiver coming across the formation. But I think Shanahan really has helped settle things down there, like you would expect he would, even though he's a very young coach. Obviously, he knows what he's doing offensively. They've got an unbelievable run game, and then I like Garoppolo. And for Kittle to do well, Garoppolo's got to do well. And so, I like Kittle in this one as well.
Chiefs and Broncos. I do like Le'Veon Bell since he's on my team. I'm certainly looking at him as a flex option. I hope I'm not wrong. It does look like Edwards-Helaire got the message, though, so as we mentioned. Now, with Sammy Watkins out, I like Kelsey and Hardeman even more than previously. So play them if you got them. I have become a Tim Patrick fan, and Philip Lindsay did rush for over 100 yards last week. So along with Jerry Jeudy, I'm sold on those guys.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are kind of this year's Pop Rocks, right, of the NFL offenses. And so while they probably wouldn't have Sammy Watkins, this week, we saw how they went into Buffalo and dominated that game from start to finish, offensively, defensively. They ran the ball at will. And now they pick up, as you mentioned, Le'Veon Bell. At the Broncos, they look great to me in the first game back. Drew Lock did. And, Patrick obviously came in and did well and has been consistent really this whole entire year. The last 2 games, over 100 yards for him. Even though I think Jerry Jeudy is their best long-term receiver, Patrick for right now is doing really well.
Tell you how much I like Patrick. This morning when the clock changed midnight, I picked up Patrick and I released James Washington, a Steeler. So that's how much I like him. Buccaneers at Raiders. The Bucs defense should not disappoint against the Raiders. So this could be a long day for Derek Carr. I love Ronald Jones here. Gronk finally getting the work. So if you have him, start him. The Raiders coming off a bye week, and I just don't see any of them as outstanding this week, but they're all playable. Don't get me wrong. They're all playable, but I just don't think any of them are super outstanding going up against the Bucs.
Okay, so now the Bucs did what they did, right, against Green Bay, but they were in Tampa. Now they're going to be in Las Vegas, and the Raiders looked awfully good against the Chiefs for you to be kind of jumping ship on them, I think, this early. I think that, yes, the Buccaneers do have a good defense, but the Raiders have a lot of good talent offensively, and I think a great system under Gruden. And with an extra week to prepare, remember they're coming off a bye, even though the Bucs defense is a top shelf defense, I like everything Gruden's done so far. As long as the Raiders offense doesn't get a game away, the Bucs are going to have to score too. Remember, they didn't do a great job offensively themselves in that department against the Packers. I also like the way Ronald Jones is running, though, in terms of the Bucs offense. He's running with authority. He's finishing runs. And I think Mike Evans is closer to 100% now. He looked a lot better on that ankle than the week before. So I'd start him. Godwin, I think, is still rounding back into shape after being nicked up all year. I think I would not start him. And Gronk, as we mentioned early in the year, okay, he's going to have some games and some flashes in games where, oh, man, the old Gronk's back. My opinion is he's not. And I think it's going to be kind of an up week followed by several down weeks and then maybe an uptick again. So I think Gronk, for me anyway, I wouldn't start him.
He played well. He looked a little awkward to me. Did he look awkward to you?
Just well, he doesn't look as physical, I would say, as he once did in terms of the way he blocks. They have him coming back across the formation to cut off the backside on a few running plays. He doesn't do it with quite the authority he used to. He doesn't finish off receptions quite as forcefully and physically as he used to. So, I mean, he's still a good receiver. Obviously, Brady still has that connection with him and trusts him, knows where he's going to be and look for him at times during games. But I just don't see Brady's going to have to be consistent, which to me, he hasn't shown he is right now. And I don't think Gronk's going to be either.
And, I think, too, that, tight ends are really basically touchdown dependent. And that's certainly the case as far as Gronk is concerned. Bears at the Rams. The Bears, well, they are all yours, my friend.
Okay, so I think for the Bears, okay, this year's no different really than the last 2 or 3, where it's about their defense. And that's, Foles or whoever's a quarterback has kind of got that thing figured out now. And remember now, Foles, he's shown throughout his time, he's capable of getting hot himself and can be streaky. And so I don't think he's quite hit his flow just yet, although I think he had a very good game this past week against Carolina. I love Montgomery too. Even though he hasn't produced and gotten over the hump in terms of huge numbers, he's showing to me that he runs the ball with authority. He finishes runs. He's effective out of the backfield. They made some nice short throws to him where he was able to catch the ball in space and gain some yards after the catch. I think his production is only going to increase. Kmet obviously had a good touchdown, his first of the year, and he's an excellent tight end choice as well. Although my favorite tight end choice for the Bears, like you mentioned, it's about touchdown production, and that's Jimmy Graham for me. Allen Robinson is their most talented and consistent receiver and performer, and he's clearly established himself as the go-to receiver there. They've kind of been flirting around. Sometimes it's Anthony Miller. I think the guy that's on the rise that really no one sees coming at is Darnell Mooney, the rookie receiver who they love. He's blazing fast. He's a great route runner, got excellent hands, plays with awareness. And so, if you're looking for extra ammunition coming out of the Bears, he might be the guy to look to. For the Rams, I expect them to rebound. Sean McVay is on a mission this year, it looks like to me. They've lost a couple of games, really the one against Buffalo they should have won and could have. And then, Goff has been amazing. Every game he shows up strong. And the offense is, I think, going to respond. Yes, they've got the Bears defense, but, they're going to be at home, Monday Night Football. Sean McVay has a great way of getting Jared Goff, not just throwing from in the pocket, but with the bootlegs and play action passes, has a way to get him on the edge and outside and throwing to open receivers. So I think the Rams are going to respond offensively.
For me, I do like Cole Kmet and David Montgomery here. For the Rams, I'm sold on all the receivers. I do like Gerald Everett over Tyler Higbee. It just seems like Everett is getting more involved, as I mentioned last week, in different ways, where Higbee seems to be involved, but not as much as he was when we saw that early couple of touchdown pass receptions early on in the season. Of course, Goff, and I do also like the Rams defense. Well, there you have it. Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football podcast, now a video cast as well. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, libsomradio.com, and wherever you get your podcasts. Now you can also see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way. Don't forget about our new feature, Ask the Quarterback. Each week we will select a fan who writes in to ask Erik a fantasy football related question. We'll bring the fan onto the video cast to ask that question directly, and you can be that fan by simply emailing us at brillpro@gmail.com. That's brillpro@gmail.com. You can see it right there on the screen. Join us next time. We'll see you later.